That watch still means that much to you?
It was my husband's.
Then you should keep it close.
The watch is gone. You're overreacting. No, I'm finally paying attention. A stolen family heirloom? No, something worse. He took what my husband was hiding.
This was never just a watch.
Then what did he steal?
A key.
The night my son-in-law stole my late husband's watch, he smiled at me across the dinner table like nothing was wrong. I didn't notice it was missing until after they left, until the house fell quiet, and something inside me whispered that I'd just been betrayed. When I confronted him, he denied it. My daughter begged me to let it go, but I didn't call family. I didn't cry. That same evening, I drove straight to the police station because deep down, I knew he hadn't just taken a watch. He had taken something my husband tried to protect. If you've ever felt that something wasn't right in your own family, I want you to stay with me. Like this story, share your thoughts in the comments and tell me honestly, would you have done the same thing I did? I was married to Robert White for 43 years, and in all that time, I never once saw him leave the house without that watch. It wasn't expensive, not in the way people measure value these days. No diamonds, no gold casing, no brand name that made people turn their heads. Just a simple stainless steel wristwatch with a worn leather strap that had darkened over decades of use. But to Robert, it was everything. He got it when he was 25, his first big engineering paycheck. He used to joke that it was the only impulsive purchase he ever made in his life. Everything else he'd say I calculated twice. But that watch, I just knew. And somehow, it stayed with him through everything. I remember the day we got married, Robert adjusting his tie nervously in the church hallway, glancing down at that same watch, like it could steady his heartbeat. I remember him checking the time when I went into labor with Emily, pacing the hospital floor, whispering, "Come on, baby, you can do this," as if he could will both of us through it. That watch was there on every vacation, every holiday, every quiet Sunday morning when we drank coffee on the porch. It was there when he retired, when his hair turned gray, when his hands started to tremble just slightly with age, and it was there, even in the hospital, especially in the hospital. When Robert was diagnosed with cancer, everything in our lives slowed down except time itself. I watched him grow weaker, thinner, quieter, but he refused to take that watch off. The nurses offered to remove it during treatments. He shook his head. "Not this," he said gently. "This stays." One night, about 3 months before he passed, I asked him why. We were sitting in that dim hospital room, machines humming softly around us, the kind of silence that feels too heavy to break. "Robert," I said, brushing my fingers over his wrist, "why is that watch so important?" He looked at me for a long moment, something thoughtful and distant in his eyes. Then he smiled, but it wasn't his usual warm smile. It was quieter, almost cautious. "If anyone ever wants this watch badly enough," he said slowly, "they're not really after the watch." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He didn't answer right away. He just reached over, took my hand, and squeezed it gently. "You'll understand if you ever need to," he said. I remember feeling a small chill run through me then. Not fear exactly, but something close to it, like standing on the edge of something you couldn't quite see yet. I didn't ask him again. After he passed, I kept the watch in a small wooden display box on the shelf in our bedroom. I couldn't bring myself to wear it. It felt too personal, too much like it still belonged to him. Sometimes I would open the box and just look at it, not because of what it was, but because of what it meant. It meant 43 years of love. It meant a life we built together. It meant him. So when Emily called that afternoon and said she and Jason were coming over for dinner, I didn't think twice. I was actually glad. Things hadn't been quite the same since Robert died. Emily called often, but she didn't visit as much as she used to. And when she did, Jason was always with her. Jason Carter. On the surface, he was everything a mother might want for her daughter. Successful, confident, well-spoken. He worked as a financial consultant, always dressed sharply, always had the right words ready. But something about him had always unsettled me. I couldn't explain it at first. Maybe it was the way he listened too carefully, like he was always calculating something behind his polite smile. Or the way he asked questions that felt slightly too personal. Questions about money, about assets, about what Robert had left behind. At first I told myself I was being unfair, that I was grieving, that I was looking for something to be wrong. But that evening, something shifted. Emily walked in, first smiling, arms open as she hugged me tightly. "Mom, you look good," she said, pulling back to study my face. "I'm trying," I replied softly. Jason followed behind her, carrying a bottle of wine. He gave me a quick, practiced smile. "Melissa," he said, stepping forward, "it's good to see you." "Jason." I nodded. Dinner started off normally enough. We talked about Emily's work at the hospital, about the neighbors, about the weather. Safe, comfortable topics that didn't dig too deep. But then I noticed it. Jason's eyes. They kept drifting, not toward me, not toward Emily, toward the hallway, more specifically toward the bedroom. At first I thought it was nothing. Maybe he was distracted. Maybe he was tired. But then he asked a question. "So Melissa," he said casually, swirling his wine, "do you still keep Robert's things the same way?" I looked at him a little surprised. "What do you mean, like?" "His personal items," he said. "His watch, for example. You still have that?" My fingers tightened slightly around my fork. "Yes," I said carefully. "I do." He nodded as if that confirmed something for him. "That must be worth something," he added lightly. Emily shot him a quick look. "Jason." "What?" He shrugged. "I'm just saying, vintage pieces like that can be valuable." I forced a small smile. "It's not about value." "Of course," he said quickly. "Sentimental value. I get that." But the way he said it, he didn't. I could feel it. The conversation moved on, but my unease didn't. A few minutes later, Jason stood up. "Restroom," he asked. "You know where it is," I said. He smiled. "Right." I watched him walk down the hallway, and for the first time, something inside me whispered, "Pay attention." He was gone longer than necessary. When he came back, he sat down like nothing had happened, picking up the conversation mid-sentence. But I noticed something else. His eyes flickered just for a second toward me, as if he was checking whether I had noticed. I hadn't said anything, not yet, but something had already begun to unravel, and I didn't even know it. Dinner should have felt warm that night. It should have felt like family. Instead, it felt like something was quietly being taken apart piece by piece right in front of me. I tried to ignore the feeling at first. Grief does strange things to the mind, I told myself. It makes you suspicious, sensitive too. Aware of every little shift in tone or glance, but the longer we sat at that table, the harder it became to convince myself that what I was feeling wasn't real. Jason kept talking, but not really saying anything. He complained about rising interest rates, about how people these days don't understand money, about how difficult it was to manage long-term investments when clients weren't honest about their assets. It was strange the way he phrased it. Clients, assets, honesty. He wasn't talking about work. He was talking around something. Emily kept nodding along, offering small reassurances. "You're just stressed," she told him softly. "Things will settle down." But I noticed something else. Every time she spoke, Jason would glance at her, not lovingly, not appreciatively, but almost like he was checking if she was saying the right thing, like she had learned her lines. I set my fork down slowly. "Jason," I said, keeping my voice calm. "Are things okay?" Financially, he looked at me just for a second too long. Then he smiled. "Of course," he said. "Why wouldn't they be?" "No reason," I replied gently. "You just seem preoccupied." Emily jumped in quickly. "He's just been working a lot, Mom. You know how his job is." I nodded, but I didn't press further. Not because I was convinced, but because I was watching. A few minutes later, Jason stood up again. "I'm going to grab some water," he said. "The kitchen's right there," Emily said, pointing. "Actually," he replied, already moving toward the hallway. "I think I left my phone in the other room." My chest tightened slightly. Other room. There was only one other room he could be referring to, the bedroom, where Robert's things were, where the watch was. I didn't say anything, I just listened. His footsteps faded down the hallway soft against the hardwood floor. 1 step, 2, 3, then silence. Too much silence. Emily kept talking something about a patient at the hospital, but her voice sounded distant, like it was coming from somewhere far away. Because I wasn't really hearing her anymore. I was listening to the house, waiting. Seconds stretched longer than they should have. Then I heard it, a faint sound, not loud, just enough. The soft creak of a drawer. My heart skipped. I stood up. Mom Emily said, startled, "Where are you going?" I forgot something, I replied quickly. I walked toward the hallway, each step slower than the last. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing, maybe everything. But when I reached the end of the hallway, I stopped. The bedroom door was slightly open, just an inch. Enough to see the edge of the dresser. Enough to see Jason. He was standing there, his back to me. Still. Too still. Like he had been caught but didn't want to show it. My breath caught in my throat. "Jason," I said. He turned immediately. Too quickly. Like he had been waiting for that moment. "Oh, hey," he said, holding up his phone. "Found it." I stared at him. Then at the dresser. Then back at him. "You left it in here?" I asked. "Yeah," he said casually. "Must have dropped it earlier." Earlier. He'd never been in this room earlier. We had all been in the dining room the entire time. He knew it. I knew it. But he said it anyway. And Emily wasn't there to hear it. I stepped into the room slowly. Everything looked normal. Too normal. The bed was made, the curtains slightly open, the small wooden display box sitting exactly where I had left it, closed. Jason shifted slightly. "Well, he said I'll get back to the table." He brushed past me, just slightly too close, and for a brief second I caught something else, a scent. Not his cologne. Metal, faint, sharp. Then he was gone. I stood there alone, my eyes fixed on the display box. I walked over, slowly, carefully, as if moving too fast would change something. I reached out, placed my fingers on the lid, and paused. Why was I hesitating? Because something inside me already knew. I opened it. The watch was still there, resting exactly where it should be. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "See," I told myself, "you're imagining things. You're grieving. You're overthinking." I closed the box again. Maybe I had been wrong. Maybe Mom Emily called from the dining room. "Are you okay?" "Yes," I said, forcing my voice steady. "I'm coming." I walked back. Jason was already seated, smiling, relaxed, like nothing had happened. Dinner continued, but something had changed. Not in the room, in me. Because now I wasn't just uneasy, I was aware. Every movement Jason made felt deliberate. Every word he spoke felt rehearsed. Even the way he laughed slightly too loud, slightly too late, felt calculated. At one point, he insisted on helping clear the table. "You've done enough," he said, standing up. "Let me help." Emily smiled at him. "See, I married a good one." I watched him as he gathered the plates. Watched the way his eyes moved, not at the dishes, not at Emily, but around the room, mapping it, memorizing it, like he was learning something he planned to use later. He carried the plates into the kitchen and disappeared again. This time I didn't follow. I just stood there, listening, waiting, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't random. This wasn't careless. This was intentional. When Jason came back, he was smiling again, too easily, too comfortably, like a man who believed he was in control. They didn't stay much longer after that. Emily hugged me tightly before leaving. "I'll call you tomorrow," she said. "I'd like that," I replied softly. Jason shook my hand, firm, confident. "Good seeing you, Melissa." "You too," I said, but I didn't mean it. I watched them walk out, listened to the car start, heard it drive away. And then, silence. The house felt different now. Not empty, disturbed. I stood in the living room for a long moment, then I turned and walked back down the hallway, toward the bedroom, toward the dresser, toward the small wooden box. This time, I didn't hesitate. I don't think I've ever felt a silence that loud before. It pressed against my ears as I stepped into the bedroom like the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to see what I already feared. The lamp beside Robert's old reading chair cast a soft, familiar glow across the room. Everything looked exactly the same. His books neatly stacked, his glasses resting on the nightstand, the faint scent of his cologne still lingering in the air. For a moment, I almost convinced myself nothing had changed, that I was still imagining things, that grief was playing tricks on me. But my feet kept moving, slow, heavy, drawn toward the dresser like something was pulling me there. The small wooden display box sat exactly where I had left it, closed, untouched, ordinary. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for it again. "This is ridiculous," I whispered to myself. "You just checked it." I had, not even 15 minutes ago. The watch had been there. I was sure of it. I placed my fingers on the lid and paused. There's a moment just before the truth reveals itself when your body tries to protect you. It tells you not to look, not to open it. Because once you do, you can't go back. But I opened it anyway, and everything inside me went cold. It was empty, completely empty. The indentation in the velvet lining where Robert's watch had rested for years was still there, but the watch itself was gone. I stared at the box, my mind refusing to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. "No," I whispered. "That wasn't possible. I had just seen it, just minutes ago." I picked up the box, turning it slightly as if the watch might somehow reappear from a different angle. It didn't. My heart began to pound. Fast, loud, unsteady. I set the box down and started searching. At first it was controlled. I checked the dresser drawers, the nightstand, the closet, anywhere I might have absent-mindedly moved it, anywhere it could have been misplaced. But with every passing second, my movements became faster, sharper, more desperate. No. I pulled open drawers, pushed aside, clothes checked under the bed, inside bags, places that made no sense, places I knew I hadn't touched. But I kept searching anyway, because the alternative was worse. Finally, I stopped, stood in the middle of the room, breathing hard, trying to think. You saw it. You know you saw it. 15 minutes ago. So what changed? The answer came immediately. Jason. The way he stood in this room, the way he turned too quickly, the way he said he had left his phone, the faint metallic scent. My chest tightened. He had taken it. He had taken it. Right in front of me, and I hadn't stopped him. My hands curled into fists. I reached for my phone and dialed Emily. She picked up on the third ring. "Mom," she said, "everything okay?" I didn't waste time. The watch is gone. There was a pause. A brief, sharp silence. "Then what?" she said. "Robert's watch." I repeated, my voice steady but cold. "It's gone. It was here 15 minutes ago. Now it's not." Another pause, longer this time. Then Jason's voice appeared in the background. "What's going on?" Emily covered the phone for a second, but I could still hear the muffled exchange. Then she came back. "Mom," she said carefully, "are you sure you didn't just move it?" "No," I said firmly. "I checked it before you left. It was there." Jason's voice came closer. "Put me on," he said. I didn't wait for Emily to respond. "I can hear you, Jason." There was a slight shift in his tone. Not defensive, not nervous, just calm. Too calm. "Melissa," he said almost gently, "I think you might be mistaken." "I'm not mistaken." "Grief can do that," he continued smoothly. "It can make things feel certain when they're not." I felt something inside me snap. "You were in my bedroom," I said. "I went to get my phone. You didn't leave it there." A brief pause, then a soft chuckle. "Melissa," he said, "why would I take a watch?" The question wasn't curious. It was rehearsed, calculated, because he already had an answer prepared. "I don't know," I said quietly, "but you're the only one who had access to that room." "That's not true," he replied quickly. "You were in there. Anyone could have moved it. No one else was in this house." Another pause. Then, "Look," he said, his tone shifting slightly. "I think we're turning this into something it's not." Emily jumped in. "Mom, please." she said, her voice strained. "Let's not do this. It's just a watch. Just a watch." The words hit harder than I expected. "It's not just a watch," I said, my voice tightening. "I know," she said quickly. "I know it means a lot. But accusing Jason, I'm not accusing." I cut in. "I'm stating facts." "No," she said firmer. "Now you're assuming. And it's not fair, not fair." I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself, trying to understand how this had flipped so quickly, how I had gone from being a mother to being the problem. "Emily," I said softly, "you saw him. He went into the bedroom twice. He said he was looking for his phone. He lied. You don't know that. I do know that." Jason exhaled slowly, like he was trying to remain patient. "Melissa," he said, "I think it would be best if we all just take a step back. Emotions are high. You've been through a lot." There it was. Not denial, not anger. Positioning. He was building a narrative, one where I wasn't reliable, one where I couldn't be trusted, one where, if I pushed this further, I would be the one who looked unreasonable. My fingers tightened around the phone. "I want it back," I said. Silence. "Then I don't have it," he replied. Flat, final. Like the conversation was already over. Emily spoke again, her voice softer now, pleading. "Mom, please don't do anything drastic. Let's just look for it tomorrow. I'll come over, we'll figure it out together." Tomorrow? He wanted time. Time to do what sell it, hide it, disappear it, no, I said quietly. What she asked. "I'm not waiting until tomorrow. Mom, I'm not letting this go." My voice didn't rise, it didn't shake, but something in it changed, something that made both of them go silent. Because in that moment, I wasn't asking anymore. I wasn't hoping. I wasn't doubting myself. I knew. And for the first time since Robert passed, I felt something stronger than grief. Clarity. "I'll handle it," I said. "Mom, what does that mean?" Emily asked, panic creeping into her voice, but I didn't answer. I ended the call. Slowly. Deliberately. Then I stood there in the quiet bedroom staring at the empty box, and I remembered Robert's words. If anyone ever wants this watch badly enough, they're not really after the watch. My heart steadied, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't about loss. This was about intention. And whatever Jason had taken from me tonight, it wasn't going to stay with him. Not for long. For a long time, I just stood there, in that quiet bedroom, in front of that empty box, trying to understand how everything had shifted so quickly from a simple dinner to something that now felt deliberate, planned, calculated. I picked up the display box again, running my fingers along the velvet indentation where Robert's watch had rested for decades. Gone. Not misplaced, not forgotten, taken, and not by a stranger. By someone who had sat at my table, eaten. My food smiled at me like family. A strange calm settled over me then. Not the kind that comes from peace, the kind that comes from certainty. I walked into the living room, grabbed my purse, and slipped my phone inside. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't sit down. I didn't give myself time to think twice. Because if I did, I knew someone would talk me out of it. Emily would call again. Friends would say, "Don't escalate this." Someone would tell me it's just a misunderstanding. But I wasn't confused. I was being tested, and I wasn't going to fail that test by staying silent. The drive to the police station felt longer than it actually was. Every red light seemed to last forever. Every passing car felt too slow. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as Robert's voice echoed in my mind. If anyone ever wants this watch badly enough, they're not really after the watch. What were you protecting Robert? What did you see that I didn't? When I pulled into the parking lot, I hesitated for the first time. The building stood there plain and official, its fluorescent lights glowing against the dark sky. This was real. Walking through those doors would make everything real. It would turn suspicion into accusation, family into case file. I closed my eyes for a moment, then I stepped out of the car. The night air was cool, sharp against my skin. It grounded me, reminded me that I was still here, still capable of making my own decisions. Inside, the station was quiet. A television murmured softly in the corner, tuned to some late-night news program no one was really watching. The smell of coffee lingered in the air, strong, slightly bitter. A young officer looked up from behind the front desk. "Ma'am," he said, "can I help you?" I walked up, slowly placing both hands on the counter. "I need to report a theft." His expression shifted, slightly more focused now. "Okay," he said, reaching for a notepad. "What was taken, I swallowed once." "A watch," I said. He paused, pen hovering. "Do you know when it went missing?" "Yes, and where?" "My home." "Do you have any idea who might have taken it?" There it was. The question that changed everything. I met his eyes. "Yes," I said. "Who, my son-in-law?" He blinked, not in disbelief, but in surprise. "All right," he said carefully. "Let's start from the beginning." He introduced himself as Officer Daniel Brooks and guided me to a small desk off to the side. I sat down, folding my hands together to keep them steady. "Take your time," he said. So I did. I told him everything. About dinner, about Jason leaving the table, about the bedroom, about the watch being there. And then gone. I told him about the phone call, about the denial, about the way Jason had spoken, calm, controlled, already prepared. Officer Brooks listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting down notes. His expression remained neutral but attentive. When I finished, he leaned back slightly. "Do you have any proof?" he asked gently. The question didn't offend me. It grounded me. "No," I said honestly, "not yet." He nodded. "All right," he said. "We'll document this. Given the circumstances, I'm going to have a detective take a look at it. Would you be okay answering a few more detailed questions, yes?" A few minutes later, a woman entered the room. Mid-40s, sharp eyes, composed posture. "Melissa White," she asked. "That's me. I'm Detective Sarah Mitchell." She sat down across from me, flipping open a folder. "I've reviewed what Officer Brooks wrote," she said, "but I'd like to hear it from you directly." So I told the story again. More slowly this time. More precisely. Every movement, every word, every detail I could remember. When I finished, she didn't speak right away. She studied me for a moment, not suspicious, not dismissive, evaluating. "Why tonight?" she finally asked. I frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" "Why come in immediately?" she clarified. "Most people would wait, talk to family, try to resolve it privately." I held her gaze. "Because this isn't just about a watch." Her eyebrow lifted slightly. "Go on." I hesitated for only a second. "My husband," I said, "he told me something before he died." "What did he say?" I took a breath. He said, "If anyone ever wanted that watch badly enough, they weren't really after the watch." Detective Mitchell didn't smile. She didn't dismiss it. She just nodded slowly. "And you believe that applies here?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because Jason didn't act surprised," I said. "He didn't get defensive. He didn't even pretend to help me look for it. He already had an answer ready." I leaned forward slightly. He expected this. That seemed to interest her. Expected what she asked, that I would question him. I said. That I would doubt myself. That I would hesitate. "And you didn't." "No." She closed the folder. "All right," she said. "Here's what we're going to do." My heart beat a little faster. "We'll file this as a formal theft report," she continued. "We'll document your statement and we'll follow up. If your son-in-law tries to sell the item or move it through any traceable channel, there's a chance we'll catch it. And if he doesn't," I asked quietly. She held my gaze. "Then we keep digging." For the first time that night, I felt something shift. Not relief, but support. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Officer Brooks handed me a copy of the report. "Keep this," he said. "If anything changes, call us immediately." I nodded, taking the paper. As I stood up to leave, Detective Mitchell spoke again. "Melissa." I turned. "You did the right thing," she said. The words hit deeper than I expected, because for the first time since I walked into that station, I allowed myself to believe it. Outside, the night felt different. The air lighter, the silence less oppressive. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, staring at the report in my hands. A simple piece of paper, but it meant something now. It meant I had drawn a line Jason had crossed, and a line I refused to let him rewrite. My phone buzzed. Emily. I stared at her name on the screen, let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then I answered. "Mom," she said, immediately her voice tight with worry. "Where are you?" I glanced at the police station behind me. "I told you," I said calmly. "I would handle it." There was a pause. Then Mom. "What did you do?" I looked straight ahead, and for the first time that night, I didn't hesitate. I filed a report. Silence. Heavy. Shocked. "Melissa." "You didn't—" Jason's voice cut in from the background, but I had, and something told me. This was only the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind refused to slow down. Every moment replayed itself over and over again. The dinner, Jason's eyes drifting toward the hallway, the faint creak of the drawer, the empty box, Emily's voice, pleading with me to let it go. Let it go. I sat in the living room just before sunrise, a cup of coffee growing cold in my hands, and realized something that hurt more than the theft itself. Emily hadn't asked if I was okay. She hadn't said, "Mom, I believe you." She had asked me not to cause trouble, and that told me everything I needed to know about where she stood, or at least, where she thought she had to stand. The phone rang at 7:12 a.m. I knew it was her before I even looked. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Mom, Emily said immediately, her voice already strained, "Please tell me you didn't actually file a police report." "I did," I said calmly. A sharp inhale. Then, "Why would you do that?" she demanded. The question hit me harder than I expected, not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Not confused, not hurt, accusing, because something was stolen from me, I replied. "By Jason," she snapped. "You really believe that?" "Yes. Mom, that's insane." The word lingered in the air between us. Insane. I closed my eyes briefly. "Be careful with that word, Emily," I said quietly. "I'm just being honest," she insisted. "You're accusing my husband of a crime over a watch." "It's not just a watch. Then what is it?" she shot back. I hesitated, because I didn't have the full answer yet. Only a feeling. Only Robert's warning. "I don't know yet," I admitted, "but I'm going to find out." There was a long pause on the other end. Then her voice softened, but not in a way that comforted me, in a way that worried me. "Mom," she said slowly, "I think you need to consider something." "What?" "That you've been under a lot of stress," she continued. "Losing Dad. Being alone in that house. It's a lot." I felt something cold settle in my chest. There it is. "Emily," I said, my voice steady, "are you suggesting I imagine this?" "I'm saying," she replied carefully, "that maybe you're not seeing things clearly right now." I let out a slow breath, because now I understood. This wasn't just about defending Jason. This was about discrediting me. And whether she realized it or not, she was helping him do it. "I saw the watch," I said. 15 minutes later, it was gone. "You could have moved it." "I didn't." "You could have forgotten." "I didn't." "You could have stopped," I said firmly. She fell silent. "Listen to me." I continued, my voice low but controlled. "I know what I saw. I know what I didn't do. And I know the only person who had access to that room. That doesn't mean he took it," she argued. "Then where is it?" Another pause. "Then I don't know," she admitted. "Neither do I said. "But I intend to find out." "By dragging us through this?" she asked bitterly. "I'm not dragging you anywhere," I replied. "Jason made his choices. I'm making mine. That's not fair." "Fair," I repeated softly. "You think this is about fairness?" "It's about family," she said, her voice rising. And there it was, the word people use when they want you to stay quiet. Family. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window as the sun slowly rose. "Family doesn't take from you and then tell you you're imagining it," I said quietly. Emily didn't respond immediately. When she did, her voice was colder. "If you don't drop this," she said, "you're going to destroy everything." I felt a sharp ache in my chest, because for a brief second, I almost believed her. I almost considered calling the station, withdrawing the report, pretending none of this had happened. For her, for us, for what was left of our relationship. But then I remembered something else. The way Jason had looked at me. Not worried, not surprised, confident, like he knew I wouldn't push back. Like he had already decided how this would end. And that's when I realized, if I backed down now, I would be proving him right. I'm not the one destroying anything, I said softly. You are, she replied immediately. No, I said, I'm just refusing to ignore it. Silence, heavy, final. Mom, she said after a moment, her voice quieter now but no less firm, if you don't fix this. I don't know if we can come back from it. The words landed exactly where she intended them to. Deep, personal, final. I closed my eyes, let the pain wash over me. Then I answered, then we'll deal with that when the truth comes out. She didn't respond, she just hung up. I sat there for a long time after that, long enough for the sun to fully rise, long enough for the house to feel different again, not just quiet, lonely, but even in that loneliness, something else remained. Clarity. I reached for the police report on the table and read over it again, every detail, every word. This wasn't just a piece of paper anymore. It was a line in the sand, and crossing it had consequences, not just for Jason, for all of us. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered, Melissa White. Yes, this is Detective Mitchell. My heart skipped slightly. We've made some progress, she said. I sat up straighter. What kind of progress? There was a brief pause. Then, let's just say she replied your instincts were right. Something in her tone told me this wasn't small. Can you come down to the station, she asked? Yes, I said immediately. As I grabbed my keys, one thought echoed in my mind. Jason thought this would disappear quietly. He thought I would doubt myself. He thought I would choose peace over truth. But he had underestimated one thing. I had already lost my husband. I wasn't about to lose my voice, too. The drive back to the station felt different from the night before. Yesterday, I had walked in with nothing but instinct and a quiet certainty that something wasn't right. Today, I was walking in with something else. Proof, or at least the promise of it. Detective Mitchell was waiting for me in the same small office. This time her posture was more focused, more deliberate. There was a thin folder on the desk in front of her, and when I stepped inside, she gestured for me to sit. Thank you for coming in so quickly, she said. Of course, I replied, lowering myself into the chair. You said you had progress. She nodded. We do. My hands folded together in my lap tighter than I realized. What kind of progress, I asked. Instead of answering immediately, she turned the folder toward me. About 30 minutes after your report was filed last night, she said we circulated a notice to local pawn shops and secondhand dealers with a description of the watch. I felt my heartbeat quicken. And this morning, she continued, we received a call. My breath caught. From a pawn shop owner across town. I leaned forward slightly. He said a man came in late last night, less than an hour after your estimated time of theft, trying to sell a watch that matched the description. A cold chill ran through me. That fast, I whispered. Mitchell nodded, which suggests this wasn't impulsive. No, it wasn't. It never had been. What happened? I asked. He gave a story, she said. Claimed it was an inheritance piece. Said he needed quick cash, but the owner noticed something didn't add up. What, the engraving? She replied. Initials on the back plate. He asked about them. The man hesitated. Jason, of course he did. He couldn't explain them. She continued. That made the owner suspicious. So instead of buying it, he told the man to come back in the morning, said he needed to verify something first, and then he called you. Exactly. My chest tightened not with fear this time, but something sharper, something closer to confirmation. Do you have footage, I asked? Mitchell didn't answer. She simply reached over and pressed a button on her laptop. The screen lit up, black and white security footage, a small pawn shop counter, a man standing on the other side, back slightly turned, head tilted down. For a second, my brain refused to process it, because even before he turned, I already knew. "Pause it," Mitchell said softly. The image froze. "Take your time," she added. I leaned forward slowly. My eyes scanned the frame, the posture, the shoulders, the way he held himself confident, relaxed, like he belonged anywhere he walked into. Then Mitchell pressed play. The man shifted, turned slightly toward the camera, and there he was. Jason Carter, clear as day, no doubt, no confusion, no room for interpretation. I didn't realize I had stopped breathing until my chest burned. "That's him," I said quietly. Mitchell nodded. "We thought so." The video continued. Jason speaking to the shop owner, gesturing casually, smiling. At one point, he even laughed, like he wasn't trying to sell something stolen, like he was just doing business. "Listen closely," Mitchell said. The audio crackled slightly, but his voice came through. "Yeah, my wife's father passed. Left me a few things. Figured I'd sell what I don't need." I felt my hands tighten. My husband. Reduced to a story. A lie. A transaction. Did he leave anything else, the shop owner asked in the video? Jason hesitated. Just for a second. "Not really," he said. "Just some old stuff. Old stuff." My throat tightened. Mitchell paused the video again. "That hesitation," she said, pointing at the screen, "that's where he realized he didn't know enough to make the story believable." I nodded slowly, because now I saw it too. The small cracks. The things you don't notice unless you're looking for them. "He was nervous," I said. "Not nervous enough," she replied, "but careful enough to walk away when the owner didn't immediately agree." "What happened after?" "He left," she said. "Took the watch with him. But we have his face, his voice, and his story, and that's enough," I asked. "It's a strong start," she said, "especially combined with your report." I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady myself. Because this was it. This was the moment where doubt stopped being possible. Jason didn't just take the watch. He tried to sell it immediately, without hesitation, without guilt, without anything. "He said I gave it to him," I murmured. Mitchell nodded. "We'll address that." I let out a slow breath. Part of me expected to feel relief, validation, but what I felt instead was something heavier, because proof doesn't just confirm what happened, it forces you to accept what it means. And what it meant was that my daughter's husband had looked me in the eye, lied to me, and then tried to erase something that mattered more to me than he would ever understand. "What's the next step?" I asked. Mitchell closed the laptop. "We'll bring him in for questioning," she said. "Given the footage, we have enough to apply pressure, and if he denies it." "He will," she said simply, "but denial doesn't erase evidence." I nodded. "And Emily?" That question hung in the air longer than I expected. Mitchell studied me for a moment before answering. "That depends on what she knows," she said carefully. My chest tightened, because I already knew. That was the part I wasn't ready to face. Not yet. As I stood to leave, Mitchell handed me a printed still image from the footage. Jason standing at the counter, holding the watch. I stared at it. Not because I needed confirmation, but because I needed to remember this moment. The moment everything became undeniable. Melissa Mitchell said as I reached the door. I turned. "You were right to come in," she said. I nodded once, because now there was no going back. Outside, the world looked exactly the same. Cars passing, people walking, life continuing like nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. Because now I wasn't just following a feeling. I was following the truth. And that truth was about to tear something apart. The question was, how much would be left when it was over? I thought the hardest part would be accepting that Jason had stolen the watch. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing he hadn't taken it for money alone. When Detective Mitchell called me later that afternoon, her voice carried a different tone than before. Less about confirmation, more about curiosity. "We've recovered the watch," she said. I froze. "Where?" I asked. "He didn't go back to the pawn shop," she replied, "but he didn't get far either. We tracked him through a traffic camera and approached him this morning. He still had it." Relief washed over me so suddenly I had to sit down. "Is it okay?" I asked quietly. "There's some minor damage," she said. "Looks like someone tried to force it open." My heart skipped. "Force it open, Melissa," she continued. "I think you should come take a look." I didn't hesitate. When I arrived at the station, the watch was already waiting for me. It sat inside a small evidence bag on the table, familiar, worn, and yet somehow different, fragile, like something sacred that had been handled without understanding. I reached out slowly as Mitchell opened the bag and carefully placed it in my hand. For a moment, I couldn't speak. It was heavier than I remembered, or maybe I was just feeling it differently now. They used a thin tool, Mitchell said, pointing gently to the back. Tried to pry the casing open. I turned it over and saw it. A faint, uneven scratch along the edge of the back plate. My chest tightened. "He never opened it," I whispered. Mitchell looked at me. "Your husband." I nodded. "Not once," I said. "Even when it stopped working years ago, he took it to a professional. He wouldn't even change the battery himself." Why, she asked. I swallowed. Because he said some things weren't meant to be tampered with. The words felt heavier now, more intentional. Whoever took it, she said, wasn't careful. No, Jason wasn't careful. He was desperate, and desperation makes people reckless. "Can it still be opened?" I asked. Mitchell hesitated. "We could send it to a technician," she said. "But given the damage, there's a chance we might lose whatever's inside." Inside, the word echoed. I looked down at the watch again. Robert's voice filled my mind. If anyone ever wants this watch badly enough, they're not really after the watch. My fingers tightened around it. "No," I said. Mitchell raised an eyebrow. "No, I don't want a technician," I said. "Melissa, if there's something inside—" "There is," I interrupted quietly. She studied me. "You're certain?" "No," I admitted. "But I trust him." A long pause. Then she nodded. "All right," she said. "Do you know someone who can handle something like this?" Carefully, I thought for a moment. Then one name came to mind immediately. Edward Collins, Robert's closest friend, a man who had known him longer than I had. If Robert trusted anyone with something delicate, it would be Edward. "Yes," I said, "I do." An hour later, I was standing inside Edward's workshop. The space smelled faintly of oil and metal, filled with tools, parts, and half-disassembled machines. It felt like stepping into a place where time itself was studied, measured, and respected. Edward looked up as I walked in. "Melissa," he said, concern flashing across his face. "I heard about Robert. I meant to call." "I know," I said softly. "It's been a lot." He nodded. Then his eyes dropped to my hand, to the watch. And everything in his expression changed. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "It's Robert's," I said. "Someone tried to take it apart." Edward stepped closer immediately. "Let me see." I placed it gently on his workbench. He didn't touch it right away. He just looked at it, carefully, respectfully, like he was reading something invisible. Then he exhaled. "I was wondering when this would happen," he murmured. My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached for a small set of precision tools and carefully positioned the watch under a magnifying light. "Did he ever tell you about it?" Edward asked. "No," I said. "Only that strange warning." Edward nodded slowly. "That sounds like him." He worked in silence for a few minutes, adjusting the angle, inspecting the damaged edge. Then, with an almost delicate motion, he began to open the back plate, not forcing it, not rushing, just guiding it. And after a few seconds, it clicked, a soft, almost inaudible sound. The back plate loosened. Edward lifted it carefully, and both of us leaned in. Inside wasn't what I expected. No jewels, no cash, no obvious valuables, just an engraving, tiny, precise, deliberate, a series of numbers, and beneath them, initials. Edward went still. Then he let out a low breath. "I knew it," he said. "What is it?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, and for the first time since I arrived, he seemed serious. Not curious, not intrigued. "Serious, Melissa?" He said slowly, "This isn't just a watch." I felt my chest tighten. "I figured that much." He nodded. "These numbers," He continued, pointing gently. They're not random. What are they? He hesitated, then they're a bank reference. The room seemed to shift. A what? A safe deposit box, he said. Robert used to design systems like this, simple, hidden in plain sight. He didn't trust digital records, said they could be erased, hacked, manipulated. I stared at the engraving, so he hid it. Here Edward nodded. Where no one would think to look, he said. My mind raced. All those years, all those moments, the way Robert protected that watch, the way he refused to let anyone touch it, the way he warned me. He knew, I whispered. Edward looked at me. Knew what that someone might come for it, I said. The realization settled in slowly, heavy, unavoidable. Jason hadn't just stolen a watch. He had gone after something Robert had hidden, something important enough to protect, something valuable enough to risk everything for. Melissa Edwards said gently, "Whatever's in that box." Robert didn't leave it by accident. I nodded slowly, because now I understood something I hadn't before. This wasn't just about the past. It was about something Robert had prepared for the future, for me, for when I asked quietly. Edward met my eyes, for when you needed it. I closed my fingers around the watch, and for the first time since all of this began, I felt something shift. Not fear, not anger, purpose. Because now I wasn't just trying to get something back. I was about to uncover something Robert had spent years protecting. And Jason had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning, I woke up before the sun, not out of habit, out of anticipation. For the first time since Robert passed, I wasn't waking up to grief. I was waking up to purpose. The watch sat on my nightstand, its back now carefully resealed by Edward. You wouldn't know anything had been opened unless you were looking for it, unless you knew. I ran my fingers over it gently before getting out of bed. You always had a reason, I whispered. And now? I was about to find out what it was. By 9:15 a.m., I was standing outside Benson and Clark Federal Bank, the same place Robert had trusted for decades. The building was exactly as I remembered. Quiet, understated, the kind of place that didn't advertise wealth, but protected it. I took a deep breath and stepped inside. The lobby smelled faintly of polished wood and paper-clean, professional controlled. A few customers stood in line speaking in hushed voices as if money itself required silence. I approached the front desk. "Good morning," the receptionist said with a polite smile. "How can I help you?" "My name is Melissa White," I said. "I need to speak with Harold Benson." Her expression shifted slightly at the name. "Do you have an appointment?" "No," I replied. "But I believe he'll want to see me, Vasa." She hesitated, then picked up the phone. After a brief exchange, she nodded. "He'll see you. Third office on the right." I thanked her and walked down the hallway. Each step felt heavier than the last, because whatever was waiting behind that door, it wasn't just paperwork. It was something Robert had left behind, something he had hidden, something he believed I would need. I knocked. "Come in," a voice called. I opened the door and stepped inside. Harold Benson looked up from his desk, his expression neutral at first, then surprised. "Melissa," he said, standing quickly. "I didn't expect I know," I said softly. "I didn't expect to be here either." He gestured for me to sit. "Is everything all right?" he asked. I placed the watch gently on his desk. His eyes dropped to it, and something in his face changed. Recognition. Not of the object, but of what it meant. "Robert told you," he said quietly. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "He warned me, that's all." Harold leaned back slowly, exhaling. "I was hoping he said that you'd never have to come here." My chest tightened. "What does that mean?" He studied me for a long moment as if deciding something. Then he nodded. "All right," he said. "If you're here, then it's time." He stood and walked over to a locked cabinet behind his desk, retrieving a small metal box. Inside it was a key. Not large, not ornate, but heavy, deliberate. "This belongs to you now," he said, placing it in front of me. I stared at it. "A safe deposit box?" I asked. He nodded. "Robert opened it years ago," he said, "under strict instructions." No one, not even you, was to access it unless certain conditions were met. What conditions? He looked at the watch. Unless someone tried to take it. A chill ran through me. He knew I whispered. Harold didn't answer. He didn't need to. Come with me, he said instead. We walked down another hallway deeper into the bank. The atmosphere changed the further we went. Quieter, colder, more secure. He stopped in front of a heavy steel door and entered a code. The door opened with a low mechanical hum. Inside was the vault. Rows of metal boxes lined the walls, each one identical, each one holding something someone believed was worth protecting. Harold led me to a specific box, number 417. He inserted his key, then nodded for me to insert mine. My hands trembled slightly as I did. The lock clicked. Together we pulled the box free and carried it to a small private room. Take your time, he said, stepping back. I sat down and opened it. Inside were several items, carefully arranged, not random, not rushed, intentional. The first thing I saw was a stack of letters, each one labeled in Robert's handwriting. My heart clenched at the sight of it. I reached for the top one. To Melissa, it read. I swallowed hard. But I didn't open it yet. Not yet. Instead, I looked at the other contents. A USB drive, a thick folder of documents, and something else. A small envelope with a single word written across it. Jason. My breath caught, slowly, carefully. I picked it up. My fingers felt cold, because now, this wasn't just about me anymore. This wasn't just about Robert protecting something. This was about Robert knowing something specific, something dangerous. I looked up at Harold. He knew about Jason, I asked. Harold's expression was grave. He had suspicions, he said. How long? Long enough to prepare this. I looked back at the box, at the letters, at the envelope, at the truth waiting to be uncovered. My chest tightened not with fear, but with something heavier. Because whatever was inside these documents, it wasn't just going to explain the past. It was going to change the present. Melissa Harold said gently, whatever Robert left here, he didn't do it lightly. I nodded slowly, because I could feel that, in every detail, in every piece, in every careful decision he had made. I reached for the letter addressed to me. My name, in his handwriting, the last thing he had written, just for me. I held it for a moment, then slowly, I opened it. My hands trembled as I unfolded the letter. For a moment I couldn't read it. Not because the words were unclear, but because they were his. Robert's handwriting had always been neat, precise, almost mechanical. Even now, every letter sat perfectly in place, like he had measured the distance between each word, like he had taken his time, like he knew this would matter. I drew in a slow breath and began. Melissa, if you're reading this, then something has already gone wrong. My chest tightened immediately. I hoped it wouldn't come to this. I hoped I was wrong, but I've learned over the years that hope doesn't replace preparation. I swallowed hard, my eyes moving faster now. There are things I chose not to tell you while I was alive, not because I didn't trust you, but because I didn't want to burden you with suspicion without proof. A sharp ache spread through my chest. Not burden me, protect me. But if you're here, then you deserve the truth. I paused, closed my eyes briefly, then continued. Jason Carter is not the man he pretends to be. The words hit like a physical blow. Even though I already knew something was wrong, seeing it written by Robert made it real in a way nothing else had. Over the past 3 years, he has approached me multiple times under the pretense of financial advice. At first, I believed he was trying to help, but gradually his requests became more specific. My fingers tightened around the paper. He asked detailed questions about my assets, my accounts, my investments. He pushed for access, suggesting that I consolidate funds under his management for efficiency. I let out a shaky breath. He had done the same to me. Subtly, carefully, testing. When I refused, he became more persistent, not aggressive, but strategic. He began presenting documents, investment proposals, opportunities that required quick decisions. Something about them felt wrong. Robert had always trusted his instincts, always. So I did what I have always done when something didn't add up. I investigated. My heart pounded. The documents he gave me were not legitimate. Portions were copied from real financial reports, but altered. Numbers shifted, signatures forged, timelines manipulated. I felt the room spin slightly. Forged. I confronted him indirectly, gave him opportunities to correct himself. He didn't. Instead, he adjusted his approach. Of course he did. Jason didn't back down. He adapted. He began speaking less about investments and more about inheritance. My breath caught. About what would happen to my assets after I was gone. I lowered the letter slightly, my mind racing. He knew I whispered. Harold remained silent behind me. I forced myself to continue. Melissa, I need you to understand something clearly. Jason is patient. He does not rush. He waits for moments of vulnerability. My chest tightened. And I believe he was waiting for mine. A wave of cold realization washed over me. Robert's illness, his weakness, his dependence. Jason had seen it and waited. I cannot prove that he intended to harm me, but I can prove that he intended to control what I left behind. My hands trembled harder now. That is why I created this system. The watch, the code, the vault, everything connected. Inside this box, you will find documentation of his attempts, copies of altered files, records of conversations, and a digital recording I made shortly before I stopped engaging with him. My eyes flicked to the USB drive. My heart skipped. If you are reading this, then one of two things has happened. Either Jason has acted prematurely, or I have underestimated him. I felt a lump rise in my throat, because now I knew which one it was. I am sorry that you have to deal with this, but I trust you, more than anyone. Tears blurred my vision. I blinked them away, forcing myself to finish. Do not let anyone convince you that you are mistaken. Do not let anyone pressure you into silence, and most importantly, do not sacrifice truth to preserve the illusion of peace. My breath hitched, because that was exactly what Emily had asked me to do. The watch was never meant to be valuable. It was meant to be noticed. I froze, read the line again, slower. It was bait. A chill ran through my entire body. Bait. Robert hadn't just protected something, he had set something up, something intentional, something designed to reveal the truth. If someone takes it, then you will know who you are dealing with. My hands went still, because now everything made sense. Jason didn't just steal the watch, he exposed himself, exactly the way Robert predicted. I love you, Melissa, always. The letter ended there. No signature, no farewell, just certainty. I lowered the paper slowly, my hands resting in my lap. For a long moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't even breathe properly, because everything I thought I was uncovering had already been seen, already been understood, already been prepared for. He turned it into a test, I whispered. Harold nodded quietly. Yes, he said. He did. I looked down at the contents of the box again. The USB drive, the documents, the envelope with Jason's name on it. All of it, waiting. All of it, evidence. All of it, truth. And suddenly something inside me shifted. Not grief, not fear. Something sharper, stronger, resolve. Because now I wasn't just reacting anymore. I wasn't just trying to prove something. I was continuing something Robert had started. He wanted this to come out, I said. Harold met my eyes. He wanted you to be protected, he corrected gently. I nodded slowly, because that was true. But it was more than that. Robert hadn't just protected me. He had trusted me to finish what he couldn't. I picked up the envelope labeled Jason, turned it over in my hands. Whatever was inside it wouldn't just confirm the truth, it would confront it. And once I opened it, there would be no going back. I looked at Harold. Call my attorney, I said. His expression didn't change, but I saw the understanding in his eyes. This is going further, I added, because now it had to. By the time I left the bank, I wasn't the same woman who had walked in. Something had settled inside me, quiet, steady, unshakable. For weeks I had been grieving. For days I had been reacting. But now, I was prepared. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove straight to Michael Reynolds' office. If Robert had trusted anyone outside our family, it was Michael. He had handled our legal matters for over 20 years. Wills, property, retirement accounts. He knew how Robert thought. More importantly, he knew how Robert planned. When I walked into his office, he stood up immediately. "Melissa," he said, concern written all over his face. "I heard there was some trouble." "There is," I replied calmly, "and it's bigger than I thought." I placed the folder, the USB drive, and the envelope on his desk. His expression shifted. "Sit," he said quietly. So I did. And for the next hour, I told him everything. The theft, the police report, the pawn shop footage, the watch, the code, the vault, Robert's letter. Michael didn't interrupt. He didn't react immediately. He just listened, carefully, professionally. But when I finished, he leaned back slowly, exhaling through his nose. "Robert always did think 10 steps ahead," he muttered. "That's one way to put it," I said. He picked up the envelope labeled Jason. "Have you opened this?" he asked. "No," I replied. "Good," he said. "Let's do this properly." He slid on a pair of thin gloves, then carefully opened the envelope. Inside were several documents. He scanned the first page, then the second, then the third. And with each one, his expression hardened. "What is it?" I asked. Michael looked up. "This," he said slowly, "is not just theft." My stomach tightened. "It's fraud," he continued. "Attempted financial exploitation, possibly identity manipulation." My breath caught. "Are you serious completely?" he said. "These are copies of the documents Jason tried to present to Robert. Altered financial agreements, forged signatures. He was trying to gain control of Robert's assets." I stared at him. "He didn't just want money," I said. "No," Michael replied. "He wanted access." The difference hit hard. Because money can be taken once. Access can be taken repeatedly. "He planned this," I whispered. "Yes," Michael said, "and based on these documents, he's been planning it for a long time." I felt a wave of anger rise in my chest. Not explosive, not chaotic, cold, controlled. "How far can we take this?" I asked. Michael didn't hesitate. "As far as you're willing to go." I nodded. "All the way." He studied me for a moment, then gave a small, approving nod. "All right," he said. "Then we do this carefully. What do you suggest we don't confront him emotionally?" Michael said. "We confront him with structure. Meaning, we control the environment," he replied. "We control the evidence. And most importantly, we control the narrative." I understood immediately. "You want him to talk. I want him to expose himself," Michael corrected. A slow breath left my lungs. "Yes," I said, "so do I." An hour later, everything was set. Michael contacted Detective Mitchell. She agreed to be on standby, not visible, but ready, if things escalated. And then, I made the call. Emily answered on the second ring. "Mom," she said, cautious. "I need you to come over," I said. A pause. "Why? Because we need to talk," I replied. "All of us." Another pause. "Then Jason's here," she said. "Good," I answered. "Bring him." Silence. "Then fine," she said. "We'll be there in 30 minutes. I ended the call. And for the first time since this all began, I felt completely still. Not nervous, not uncertain, just ready. Michael arrived shortly after. He sat quietly in the living room, reviewing the documents again, organizing them into a neat, deliberate stack. "You don't need to say much," he told me. "Let the evidence do the work." I nodded, because I didn't trust myself to stay calm otherwise. At exactly 4:02 p.m., I heard the car pull into the driveway. My heart beat once, twice. Steady, controlled. The front door opened. Emily walked in first, her face tense, her eyes searching. Jason followed behind her, calm, composed, smiling, like he still believed this was something he could manage. Mom Emily said, her voice tight, "What's going on?" I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at them. Then I gestured toward the living room. Sit. Jason's eyes flicked briefly to Michael. And this is he asked. My attorney, I said. That was the first crack. Small, but visible. His smile tightened. Attorney, he repeated lightly. Melissa, don't you think that's a bit excessive? No, I said simply. I don't. They sat down. Emily glanced between us, confusion and anxiety written all over her face. Mom, what is this? She asked. I took a slow breath. Then I reached for the folder and slid the first document across the table. Start there, I said. Jason didn't touch it immediately, but Emily did. She picked it up. Read the first few lines. Then her expression changed. What is this? She asked. Ask him, I said. Her eyes shifted to Jason. He glanced at the document briefly, then leaned back, relaxed, dismissive. I don't know what that is, he said. Michael spoke for the first time. It's a forged financial proposal, he said calmly. One you presented to Robert White approximately 8 months ago. Jason's eyes snapped toward him. That's a serious accusation, he said. It's a documented fact, Michael replied. Emily's hands trembled slightly as she turned the page. There's more, I said quietly. She kept reading. Each document worse than the last, each one clearer, each one harder to deny. Jason, she whispered. He leaned forward now, more engaged, more alert. These are out of context, he said quickly. You don't understand how these things work. Then explain it, I said. He looked at me. Really looked at me this time. And for the first time, there was no smile, only calculation. Melissa, he said slowly, you're making a mistake. No, I replied. You did. A long silence filled the room, heavy, tense, final. Jason exhaled slowly, then leaned closer, lowering his voice just enough that Emily couldn't hear clearly. You should have let this go, he said quietly. My stomach turned, but I didn't react. I just looked at him, or what I asked. His eyes darkened. You don't know how far this can go, he said. I felt a chill run through me, because this was the moment, the real one. Not the denial, not the lies, the truth behind them, and he had just revealed it. I leaned back slowly, then reached into my pocket and placed my phone on the table, the screen still recording. His voice, his words, his threat. Jason saw it and everything changed. For a moment, no one spoke. Jason's eyes were locked on the phone sitting between us, the small red recording light blinking steadily, quiet, undeniable. Emily followed his gaze. What is that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because Jason already understood, and I could see it in the way his posture changed, the confidence gone, replaced by something sharper, more desperate. You're recording this, he said, his voice low. I am, I replied calmly. That's illegal, he snapped. Michael spoke without looking up. Not in this state, he said evenly. Single-party consent. Jason's jaw tightened. He looked back at Emily. Don't listen to this, he said quickly. This is being twisted. Emily didn't respond. She was still staring at the documents in her hands, still trying to reconcile what she was seeing with what she thought she knew. Emily, he pressed softer now. You know me. That word again. No. I watched her carefully, because this was the moment that mattered, not the evidence, not the police, not even the law. This moment, the moment where she had to decide who she believed, her husband, or the truth. Jason, she said slowly, what are these? They're drafts, he replied quickly. Preliminary documents. That's how financial consulting works, with forged signatures. Michael cut in. Jason shot him a glare. You don't understand the industry. I understand fraud, Michael replied calmly. Silence fell again. He shifted his attention back to Emily. They're taking this out of context, he said, his tone softening. Your mom's upset. She's grieving. She's not thinking clearly. Stop, Emily said suddenly. It wasn't loud, but it was firm. And it surprised all of us, even Jason. Just stop talking for a second, she added. Her hands were trembling now, her breathing uneven, because the truth was catching up to her. I asked you a question, she said, her voice breaking slightly. What are these? Jason hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough, because Emily saw it. We all did. "They're nothing," he said, finally. And that was the worst answer he could have given. Because it wasn't an explanation. It wasn't even a lie. It was avoidance. And Emily knew it. "You went into Mom's bedroom," she said suddenly. Jason froze. "I what?" "I saw you," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "The second time. When you said you were getting water." My heart skipped. This was new. "You went down the hallway," she said. "You stayed there longer than you should have." Jason shook his head quickly. "You're remembering wrong." "No," she said louder now. "I'm not." He stood up, pacing slightly, trying to regain control. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "You're both turning on me over nothing." "Nothing," I said quietly. He turned toward me, eyes sharp. "You filed a police report over a watch," he said. "You brought a lawyer into your own living room. You're tearing your own family apart." "I'm exposing the truth," I replied. "No," he snapped. "You're creating problems where there aren't any." "And the pawn shop?" I asked. That stopped him, just for a moment. "Then what pawn shop?" he said. I held his gaze. "Detective Mitchell has the footage," I said. "You, trying to sell the watch, telling them it was an inheritance." Emily's head snapped toward him. "Is that true?" she whispered. Jason laughed. Too quickly, too loudly. "Of course not," he said. "You're just going to believe that without seeing it. You can see it," I said calmly. I reached into my bag and placed the printed still image on the table. The one from the footage. Jason, holding the watch. Emily stared at it. Her face went pale. "No," she whispered. Jason didn't speak, didn't move, didn't even look at the image, because he didn't need to. He knew. "Jason," her voice cracked. "Tell me that's not you." Silence, heavy, unavoidable. "Say something," she pleaded. He finally looked at her, and for the first time since I had known him, he didn't try to charm his way out of it, didn't smile, didn't deflect. He just exhaled. And that was all the answer she needed. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. The room felt like it had shifted, like something had collapsed in on itself. "Why?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Why would you do that?" Jason ran a hand through his hair. "This got out of hand," he muttered. "Out of hand," she repeated. "You stole from my mother." "I didn't steal anything," he snapped. "I was going to return it when I asked quietly." He didn't answer. "After you sold it," I added. His silence said everything. Emily took a step back from him, like she was seeing him for the first time. "No," she said softly. "No, this isn't real." "It is," I said gently. She shook her head. "No, you don't understand. He wouldn't. He's not Emily," I said. She looked at me, tears already forming. "I didn't want to believe it either," I said softly. "But the truth doesn't change just because we don't want it to." Her knees seemed to weaken slightly as she sank into the chair. Jason looked between us, calculating, desperate. "This isn't over," he said suddenly. And there it was again, that edge, that threat, that quiet implication that he still believed he could control the outcome. I reached for my phone, tapped the screen, stopped the recording, then I looked at him. "It is for you," I said calmly. Right on cue, a knock sounded at the door, firm, deliberate. Jason's head turned sharply. "What is that?" he demanded. I stood slowly, walked to the door and opened it. Detective Mitchell stood there, Officer Brooks beside her. Jason's face drained of color, because now there was nothing left to argue, nothing left to twist, nothing left to hide. Jason Carter. Mitchell said evenly, stepping inside, "We need you to come with us." The room fell silent. Except for one thing. Emily's quiet, broken sob. The courtroom was colder than I expected, not physically, emotionally. Everything inside it felt stripped down to facts, to evidence, to truth that could no longer be softened by feelings or excuses. I sat in the front row, hands folded tightly in my lap, trying to steady my breathing as the case was called. State of Ohio versus Jason Carter. Hearing his name like that, formal, distant, detached from the version of him I had once tried to accept as family, felt surreal. Jason sat at the defense table. No suit this time, no confident smile, no carefully practiced charm, just a man who had run out of control. Beside him sat his attorney, flipping through papers, whispering occasionally, trying to construct something, anything that might hold under pressure. Across the room, Detective Mitchell stood near the prosecution, composed as ever. Michael Reynolds sat beside me, and Emily. Emily sat 2 rows behind me, alone. She hadn't spoken to me since that night, but she had shown up, and that mattered more than she probably realized. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. And just like that, it began. The prosecution moved first, clear, direct, unemotional. They laid out the timeline, Jason's presence at my home, his access to the bedroom, the disappearance of the watch, the attempted sale at the pawn shop, the false statement about inheritance. Each point supported, each claim backed by evidence. The pawn shop owner was called first. A middle-aged man with tired eyes but a steady voice. He described Jason's visit in detail. The story didn't feel right, he said. He hesitated when I asked about the engraving. That's usually a sign. Did he identify himself, the prosecutor asked. He gave a name, the owner replied, but I checked it later. It wasn't his. Jason stared straight ahead, didn't react, didn't object, because there was nothing to object to. It had happened. Next, the footage. The screen lit up, and there it was again. Jason, standing at the counter, holding the watch, speaking casually, lying effortlessly. I felt a tightness in my chest as I watched it again, not because I needed proof, but because it forced me to relive the moment everything broke. The prosecutor paused the video at the clearest frame. "Can you identify the individual in this footage?" she asked. The pawn shop owner nodded. "That's him," he said, pointing directly at Jason. The room felt still, heavy, final. Then came Detective Mitchell. She walked to the stand with quiet confidence. She explained the investigation, the report, the timeline, the recovery of the watch, and then the recording. My recording. Jason's voice filled the courtroom. "You should have let this go. You don't know how far this can go." The words echoed louder here, stronger, stripped of tone, stripped of context, reduced to what they truly were, a threat. Emily lowered her head. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel it. Her world collapsing. When the recording ended, the prosecutor didn't speak immediately. She didn't need to. The silence said everything. "Then, Your Honor," she said calmly, "the state rests." Just like that, clean, direct, unshakable. The defense stood. Jason's attorney adjusted his tie, cleared his throat, and stepped forward. "We acknowledge," he began carefully, "that Mr. Carter exercised poor judgment." Poor judgment. The words almost made me laugh. But I didn't, because this wasn't about minimizing anymore. It was about surviving. "He was under financial stress," the attorney continued. "He made a mistake, a regrettable one, but not a malicious one." I felt Michael shift slightly beside me, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. The defense tried to reframe it. No violence, no prior record, emotional strain intent to return the item, but each point felt weaker than the last. Because intent doesn't erase action, and evidence doesn't disappear just because you explain it differently. Then came the moment I had been dreading. Defense calls Emily Carter. My heart stopped. Slowly, I turned. Emily stood up, her face pale, her hands shaking slightly, but she walked forward anyway, because now she had to choose again. She took the stand, swore the oath, sat down, and for a moment she just looked at Jason. He met her gaze, not pleading, not apologizing, still expecting, because somewhere inside him, he still believed she would protect him. The defense attorney spoke first. "Mrs. Carter," he said gently, "you know your husband well. Would you describe him as someone capable of harming your family?" Emily hesitated. A long pause. "Then no," she said quietly. Jason's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the moment didn't last. "Have you ever known him to be dishonest in your marriage?" the attorney asked. Another pause, longer this time. Emily's fingers tightened in her lap. Her eyes flicked just briefly toward me, then back to Jason, then down. "Yes," she said. The word hit harder than anything else in the room. Jason's expression changed, sharp, immediate, because now he understood. The defense faltered. The prosecutor stood. Mrs. Carter. She said, calm but firm, did you see your husband enter your mother's bedroom the night of the incident? Emily swallowed. Yes. Did he have a reason to be there? No. Did he tell you he took the watch? A pause. Then no. Did he deny it when asked yes? Did you believe him? Silence. Heavy. Painful. Emily's voice broke. I wanted to, she whispered. The courtroom held its breath. Why didn't you? The prosecutor asked. Tears slid down Emily's face. Because I knew something wasn't right, she said. I just didn't want to admit it. Jason looked away. For the first time, he couldn't face her. The prosecutor nodded once. No further questions. Emily stepped down slowly, returning to her seat, not beside him, not near him, but alone. And in that moment, everything was decided. The judge reviewed the evidence, the testimony, the timeline, then spoke, clear, measured, final. Given the evidence presented, he said this court finds the defendant guilty of theft, attempted fraud, and intimidation. The words landed without drama, without noise, but with weight, because they ended something. Jason didn't react, didn't argue, didn't speak, because there was nothing left to say. As he was escorted out, he glanced back once, not at me, at Emily. But she didn't look at him, not anymore. And I realized then, this wasn't victory. It wasn't revenge. It was consequence. And sometimes, that's the only kind of justice that truly matters. The house felt different after the trial. Not quieter, not emptier, just honest. For the first time in months, there were no unanswered questions lingering in the air, no tension hiding behind polite conversations, no unspoken doubts quietly shaping every interaction. The truth had come out, and truth, I realized, doesn't always bring peace right away. Sometimes, it just clears the space for it. Emily didn't come over for 3 days. Not a call, not a message, nothing. I didn't reach out either. Not because I didn't want to, but because I understood something now that I hadn't before. Healing doesn't happen when you chase it. It happens when both people are ready to face it. On the 4th day, there was a knock at the door. Soft, uncertain. I knew it was her before I even stood up. I opened the door slowly, and there she was, Emily. But not the version of her I had seen before, not the defensive daughter, not the woman trying to hold her marriage together at all costs. This version looked tired, worn, but real. Hi, Mom, she said quietly. Hi, I replied. For a moment, we just stood there, two people who loved each other, but didn't quite know how to stand in the same space again. Can I come in, she asked. I stepped aside. Of course. She walked in slowly, her eyes moving around the house like she was seeing it differently now, like she was noticing things she hadn't before. The pictures, the furniture, the small details that held years of memory. She stopped near the living room. I filed for divorce, she said. Just like that. No build-up, no hesitation. I nodded once. I figured you might, I said. She let out a shaky breath. I should have done it sooner. I didn't respond, because this wasn't about blame. Not anymore. I kept telling myself he was just stressed. She continued, that things would get better, that if I supported him enough, everything would fix itself. Her voice cracked slightly, but it never did. I watched her carefully, not judging, just listening, because this was the part that mattered, not what happened in court, not what Jason did, but what Emily had to face within herself. I saw things, she admitted, small things at first, lies that didn't quite add up, stories that changed. But every time I noticed something, I explained it away. She looked at me then, eyes full of regret. I did the same thing to you, she said softly. I held her gaze. Yes, I said. The word wasn't harsh, but it wasn't softened either, because truth doesn't need to be. She nodded slowly. I told you you were wrong, she whispered. I made you feel like you were imagining things. You did, I said. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry, Mom. The apology hung in the air between us. Real, raw, but not enough on its own, because apologies don't erase what happened. They acknowledge it, and what comes after that matters more. I believe you're sorry, I said gently. She blinked, like she wasn't expecting that, but that doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. Her face fell slightly. I know, she said quickly. I'm not asking for that. Good, I replied. We stood in silence for a moment, then she took a small step closer. I don't want to lose you too, she said. The words hit deep, because that was the fear underneath everything. Not Jason, not the trial, loss. She had already lost her marriage, and now she was afraid she had lost her mother too. You didn't lose me, I said quietly. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. But things are different now, I continued. She nodded. I understand. Trust doesn't come back all at once, I said. It comes back in pieces, over time. I'll take whatever you're willing to give, she said. There was no desperation in her voice this time. No manipulation, just honesty. And that mattered. I gestured toward the couch. Sit, I said. She did, carefully. Like she wasn't sure if she belonged there anymore. I sat across from her, not too close, not too far, balanced. We're going to rebuild this slowly, I said, and it's not going to be comfortable. She nodded. I don't expect it to be. You don't defend him anymore, I added. I won't, she said immediately. You don't question what happened, I continued. I won't. And you don't ask me to ignore something just to keep peace. Her eyes filled again. I won't ever do that again. I studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then we can start. A small breath of relief escaped her. Not overwhelming, not dramatic, just enough. We sat there for a while after that, not talking much, just being, and for the first time since everything began, it didn't feel forced. It felt possible. Before she left, she paused at the doorway. Mom, she said, yes. She hesitated. Then, thank you for not giving up. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Clarity. I didn't do it for you, I said softly. She frowned slightly. Then why I held her gaze? I did it because it was the right thing to do. She nodded slowly. And somehow, that answer meant more than anything else I could have said. When she left, the house was quiet again, but this time, it didn't feel lonely. It felt open, like something broken hadn't been fixed, but had been given a chance to heal. And sometimes, that's enough. The watch came back to me on a quiet Thursday morning. Detective Mitchell handed it over in a small evidence envelope, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. It's officially yours again, she said. I nodded, taking it carefully. Thank you, I replied. She paused for a moment, then added, your husband. He was a smart man. A faint smile touched my lips. Yes, I said. He was. When I got home, I didn't open the envelope right away. I set it on the kitchen table and just stood there looking at it. Because this wasn't just about getting something back. It was about closing something, understanding something, letting something go. Eventually, I picked it up and carried it to the bedroom, to the dresser, to the small wooden box where it had always belonged. I opened the lid slowly. The velvet lining was still slightly indented from where it had rested for years, a space waiting to be filled. But before I placed it back, I sat down and reached for the last letter, the one I hadn't opened yet, the final one, not labeled with instructions, not marked with urgency, just folded neatly at the bottom of the safe deposit box. I held it for a moment, then opened it. Melissa. If you've made it this far, then I know something important has happened. I smiled faintly. That sounded like him, measured, careful, always choosing his words with intention. And if you're reading this, then I also know you handled it. My chest tightened, because even now, he trusted me, without question, without doubt. There are things in life we cannot control: illness, time, loss. I exhaled slowly, but there are also things we must never surrender. My eyes moved more slowly now, taking in every word, your judgment, your voice, your sense of what is right. Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading. People will tell you that keeping the peace is the most important thing. A small, painful smile formed. Emily. It isn't. The words felt simple, but they carried weight. Peace without truth is just silence. I closed my eyes briefly, let the meaning settle. Because I had lived that, almost chosen it, almost let it win. And silence can be more damaging than conflict. I wiped at my eyes, then continued. If someone ever puts you in a position where you have to choose between comfort and truth, my breath caught. Choose truth. The room felt still, grounded, certain. Even if it costs you something. It had cost me comfort, stability, the illusion of family. Because the right people will come back to you through honesty. Emily, and the wrong ones, were never truly yours to begin with. I let out a slow, steady breath, because that was the part I had struggled with the most. Letting go, accepting that some connections were never what I believed they were. I didn't leave you money in that box. A soft, almost amused smile crossed my face. Of course he didn't. I left you clarity. I looked around the room, at the life we had built, at the memories we had shared, at everything that remained, and everything that had changed. And if you understand that, then I gave you everything you need. My hands rested in my lap, still, quiet, full. I love you. That was it. No signature, no goodbye, just truth. I sat there for a long time after that, not crying, not thinking, just being, because for the first time since all of this began, I didn't feel like I was searching for something. I felt like I'd found it, not in the documents, not in the evidence, not even in the outcome, but in the understanding. Robert hadn't tried to protect me from pain. He had prepared me for it, and more importantly, he had trusted me to face it. I stood up slowly, walked over to the dresser, and placed the watch back into the box, right where it belonged. But it felt different now. Not heavier, not lighter, just complete. I closed the lid gently and rested my hand on top of it for a moment. Thank you, I whispered, not just for the watch, not just for the truth, but for the strength he had left behind. Later that afternoon, Emily came by. She didn't knock this time. She just stepped inside, quieter, more careful than before. I brought lunch, she said, holding up a small paper bag. I smiled faintly. That's new? She smiled back. I'm learning. We sat at the kitchen table together, simple, quiet, normal, and for the first time in a long time. It didn't feel like something was missing. It felt like something was beginning. Not perfect. Not easy, but real. As we ate, she glanced toward the hallway. The watch, she asked softly. It's back where it belongs, I said. She nodded. Good. A pause. Then Dad was right, wasn't he? I looked at her. Yes, I said. He usually was. She smiled slightly, and in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning of a new one built on truth, on boundaries, on understanding, and maybe on forgiveness, but only the kind that doesn't forget, only the kind that grows from clarity, because now I knew something I hadn't known before. Sometimes, the most valuable thing someone can leave you is not what they give you. It's what they teach you to see. There are moments in life when staying silent feels easier than speaking the truth, especially when the people involved are family. We're taught to protect relationships, to avoid conflict, to keep the peace at all costs. But what this story shows is something deeper. Peace without honesty isn't real peace, it's just delay. Melissa didn't choose confrontation because she wanted revenge. She chose it because she refused to ignore what she knew was right. And that choice didn't just expose betrayal, it protected her dignity, her late husband's legacy, and ultimately gave her daughter a chance to see the truth and rebuild her life. Sometimes love means setting boundaries. Sometimes strength means standing alone. And sometimes the hardest decisions lead to the most meaningful healing. So, I want to ask you, if you were in Melissa's place, would you have filed that report, or would you have stayed silent to protect your family? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your perspective might help someone else going through the same thing. If this story moved, you don't forget to like and subscribe. There are many more stories like this, stories about truth, courage, and the choices that define who we become.